Ambassador Marcus Delgado tugged at his collar, the formal diplomatic uniform still stiff despite the adjustments. The air inside the preparation chamber felt thick with anticipation, recycled through the station's life support systems yet somehow still carrying a hint of antiseptic. "Remember, Ambassador," Director Patel's voice crackled through his earpiece, "this is humanity's first official contact with the Novanians. Their ship arrived in orbit last week, but you're the first human they'll meet face-to-face." Marcus nodded, though no one could see him. "Understood. All preliminary communications indicate they're peaceful. Their language translation matrix seems functional." "Yes, but we know very little about their physiology or social customs. Proceed with caution." The airlock door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the meeting chamber. The room was starkly minimalist, a single oval table with two chairs facing each other. The lighting had been adjusted to a soft blue hue based on the spectral preferences transmitted by the Novanian delegation. And there she was, Ambassador Lyria. Marcus's breath caught. The Novanian stood taller than him by at least a foot, with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue as she moved. Her face featured 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, all focused intently on him. Instead of hair, delicate tendrils framed her face, gently undulating as though suspended in water. "Greetings, Ambassador Delgado," Lyria spoke, her voice melodic and perfectly understandable through the translation device affixed to what approximated a collarbone on her slender frame. "I bring peaceful intentions from the Novanian collective." Marcus bowed slightly. "Ambassador Lyria, it is an honor to represent Earth and humanity in this historic meeting." As he approached the table, Lyria suddenly tensed. Her 4 eyes widened simultaneously, and the tendrils around her face began to vibrate more rapidly. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" Marcus paused, concerned. Lyria's hand, 6-fingered with translucent webbing between each digit, raised to what must have been her respiratory organ. "Your emanation," she said, her voice now slightly tremulous. "It is unexpected." Marcus remained still. "I apologize if I've caused offense. Perhaps you could clarify?" "Not offense," Lyria clarified, visibly trying to compose herself. "Our species has highly developed chemoreceptors. Your natural scent carries molecules our kind has never encountered." Understanding dawned on Marcus. Despite the station's environmental controls and his pre-meeting decontamination shower, his natural human pheromones were affecting her. "Should I withdraw?" he offered. "We could continue this discussion via remote communication." "No," Lyria responded, her tendrils gradually slowing their movement. "This reaction is valuable data. Our preliminary scans did not prepare us for the complexity of human biochemistry. I will adapt." She gestured to the chair opposite hers. Marcus sat down carefully, maintaining what he hoped was a respectful distance. "Novanians perceive the universe primarily through chemical reception," Lyria explained, her composure returning. "What you call scent is to us the most intimate form of communication. Your species broadcasts information unconsciously that my kind would consider deeply personal." Marcus nodded, fascinated. "I understand. On Earth, we have animals with similar capabilities, though clearly not as advanced as yours. This explains why your digital communications seemed incomplete to us," Lyria said. "You were missing an entire dimension of information exchange." As they continued their discussion about diplomatic protocols and potential trade agreements, Marcus noticed Lyria occasionally tilting her head, her tendrils extending slightly toward him when he spoke passionately about certain topics. By the end of their scheduled meeting time, Marcus had learned the basics of Novanian governance and their interest in Earth's artistic creations, while Lyria seemed to have adjusted to his presence, mostly. As they concluded, Lyria made what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "Ambassador Delgado, this has been enlightening. I request permission to continue our discussions tomorrow." My species requires time to process new, sensory information. Of course, Ambassador. I look forward to it. As Marcus exited the chamber, he couldn't help but wonder what exactly his scent had conveyed to the alien diplomat, and what challenges this unexpected biological difference might present for humanity's newest interstellar relationship. 3 days into the diplomatic mission, Marcus found himself in Lyria's private quarters aboard the Novanian vessel. The room pulsed with bioluminescent light that rippled across curved walls, creating an environment that felt both alien and strangely intimate. Your accommodation request was unexpected, Lyria said, her 4 eyes blinking in their characteristic asynchronous pattern. Most species prefer neutral territory for negotiations. Marcus smiled. On Earth, we believe understanding comes from immersion. Thank you for allowing me aboard your ship. Lyria's tendrils curled with what he now recognized as pleasure. You are the first human to enter Novanian space. This is significant. The past days had been filled with formal discussions about trade opportunities and technological exchange, but Marcus had requested this private meeting to better understand Novanian culture. What he hadn't anticipated was his growing fascination with Lyria herself. May I ask a personal question? Marcus ventured. You may, Lyria responded, settling onto a cushioned platform that served as seating. You mentioned that scent is intimate communication for Novanians. What exactly are you sensing from me? Lyria's iridescent skin darkened slightly, a Novanian blush, he'd learned. Your biochemistry reveals much. When you speak of Earth, your scent carries nostalgia. When discussing trade agreements, it shifts to indicate focus and determination. She paused. And when you look at me, it changes in ways that suggest interest. It was Marcus's turn to feel warmth rise to his face. I apologize if that's inappropriate. It is not inappropriate, Lyria said, her tendrils extending slightly toward him. It is honest. Novanians value honesty above all else, which is why we never developed your concept of deception. Our scents reveal our true intentions automatically. She moved closer, and Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The translator at her collarbone seemed to pulse in response. Your current scent, Lyria observed, indicates attraction and nervousness simultaneously. Fascinating. I'm still adjusting to the idea that you can read my physiological responses so easily, Marcus admitted. Lyria's upper eyes narrowed in what he now recognized as amusement. Just as I am adjusting to the intensity of human pheromones. The first time we met, your scent overwhelmed my receptors. It was like. She searched for an analogy, experiencing all of your Earth seasons simultaneously. She extended a 6-fingered hand, the webbing between her digits shimmering in the ambient light. With your permission, I would demonstrate a Novanian greeting ritual. Between equals. Marcus nodded, extending his own hand. Lyria's touch was cool and surprisingly soft. She guided his hand to the side of her neck, where he felt a slight vibration beneath the surface of her skin. This is our primary scent gland, she explained. By sharing our biochemical signature directly, we establish trust. The moment his fingers made contact, Lyria's tendrils extended fully, vibrating with intensity. Her 4 eyes widened, then half-closed in what appeared to be pleasure. Your touch enhances the molecular exchange, she said, her normally melodic voice now deeper. It is overwhelming in the most positive sense. Marcus felt a strange tingling where their skin connected, realizing some form of chemical exchange was happening in both directions. Whatever her body was releasing was affecting him too, creating a sense of euphoria and connection unlike anything he'd experienced. When they finally separated, Marcus noticed Lyria's skin had taken on a luminescent quality that hadn't been present before. What just happened? He asked quietly. Something unprecedented, Lyria replied. Your biochemistry and mine have formed a preliminary resonance. In Novanian terms, we have become attuned. Is that good or bad? Neither. It is new. Her tendrils rippled with what he now recognized as excitement. And it suggests possibilities that neither of our species has considered before. As Marcus prepared to return to the human diplomatic quarters, Lyria's parting words lingered in his mind. Tomorrow, Ambassador, I would like to introduce you to our Queen. She will be most interested in this development. The royal chamber of the Novanian vessel dwarfed any room Marcus had previously seen aboard. Concentric circles of iridescent material formed the floor, all focusing toward a central dais where Queen Nalara reclined. Unlike Lyria, the Queen's skin shimmered with golden undertones, and the tendrils framing her face were longer, more numerous, and in constant, graceful motion. Ambassador Delgado, the Queen's voice resonated through the chamber without need for translation technology. Your reputation precedes you, quite literally. Marcus bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I'm honored by this audience. Rise, she commanded. Lyria has informed me of your unusual biochemical compatibility. This warrants investigation. Two Novanian scientists approached, carrying devices that reminded Marcus of Earth's medical scanners. Lyria stood at his side, her presence reassuring as the scientists began their examination. Your Majesty, Marcus ventured, may I ask what exactly you're looking for? Queen Nalara's four eyes focused on him with unsettling intensity. In our 5,000 years of space exploration, Novanians have encountered 17 sentient species. None have produced the biochemical response in our kind that humans, specifically you, have demonstrated. The scanner emitted a soft hum as it moved over Marcus's body. Fascinating, one scientist murmured. The human produces compounds remarkably similar to our royal pheromones. The Queen's tendrils stiffened momentarily. Explain. The molecular structure of human male sweat contains elements that our receptors interpret as royal signaling compounds, specifically, those used in mate selection. Marcus glanced at Lyria, whose skin had darkened significantly. Is that why you reacted so strongly when we first met? He asked her quietly. Before she could answer, the Queen rose from her dais, her full height impressive as she glided toward them. The scientists retreated immediately. Ambassador, Queen Nalara addressed him, your species unknowingly produces chemical signals that our kind interprets as indicators of genetic superiority and leadership. To a Novanian female, your natural scent suggests you are biologically ideal. Marcus struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. I had no idea. Is this causing a problem for your crew? Not a problem, the Queen replied. An opportunity. Our scientists believe this biochemical bridge might allow for unprecedented cooperation between our species. She turned to Lyria. Ambassador, you experienced the most direct exposure. What physiological changes have you noticed? Lyria's tendrils moved in what Marcus now recognized as embarrassment. Enhanced neural activity. Improved memory consolidation. Heightened sensory perception. She paused. And recurring thoughts of the human ambassador when he is not present. The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter. Indeed. Our preliminary theory suggests human biochemistry acts as a catalyst for certain dormant genetic expressions in our species. The second scientist stepped forward. Your Majesty, with permission, we believe the human's compounds are triggering evolutionary pathways that have been inactive in our species for generations. In what way? Marcus asked. Innovation, the Queen answered simply. Novanians excel at preservation and refinement, but we struggle with conceptual leaps. Since Lyria's exposure to you, her problem-solving approaches have become more creative. Like humans, Marcus observed. Precisely. The Queen's tendrils extended toward him in a gesture he hadn't seen before. We propose a more formal exchange. Selected Novanian scientists would study this effect while sharing technological insights with your people. Marcus nodded. That sounds reasonable, though I'll need to consult with my government. There is another matter, the Queen added, her voice lowering. I must experience this biochemical reaction personally to understand its full implications. She moved closer, her royal presence filling his senses. With your consent, Ambassador, would participate in the scent exchange ritual Lyria has described to me. Marcus felt Lyria stiffen beside him. Something in her posture suggested concern, or perhaps jealousy. Is that appropriate, Your Majesty? He asked carefully. The Queen's upper eyes narrowed. I am the final authority on what is appropriate for my species, Ambassador. But I do not wish to violate human protocols. Marcus considered the diplomatic implications. In the interest of scientific understanding and interspecies relations, I consent. As the Queen extended her hand toward him, Marcus caught Lyria's gaze. Her tendrils moved in a pattern he hadn't seen before, a warning, perhaps, or something more personal that his human senses couldn't fully comprehend. What began as a diplomatic mission had become something far more complex, and far more intimate, than anyone could have anticipated. The royal chambers had emptied following the scent exchange ritual with Queen Nalara, a ritual that had left Marcus disoriented and the Queen in a state of meditative withdrawal. Only Lyria remained with him, her tendrils moving in agitated patterns. You should not have done that, Lyria's voice carried an edge he hadn't heard before. Marcus rubbed his temples, still feeling the aftereffects of whatever biochemical exchange had occurred. The Queen requested it. I couldn't refuse without risking diplomatic relations. You don't understand Novanian hierarchy, Lyria replied. What happened was more significant than you realize. Before she could elaborate, Marcus's communication device chimed urgently. Director Patel's voice came through, tense and hurried. Ambassador, we have a situation. Multiple Novanian crew members have requested immediate access to the human diplomatic quarters. Their behavior is erratic. Marcus exchanged a concerned glance with Lyria. What kind of erratic? They appear to be in some form of biological distress. Dr. Kaminsky says their vital signs indicate heightened arousal patterns similar to certain mating behaviors observed in Earth species. Lyria's skin paled to a light lavender, alarm, Marcus had learned. It's spreading, she whispered. The Queen's response to your pheromones has triggered a cascading reaction throughout the connected members of her court. Connected members? Marcus asked. Novanians share a limited telepathic bond with their Queen, Lyria explained rapidly. When she experiences strong biochemical reactions, echoes ripple through those closest to her in the hierarchy. She paused. Your scent affected her more powerfully than anticipated. How do we contain this? Marcus asked, already moving toward the chamber exit. Lyria blocked his path. You cannot leave. Your presence would only intensify the situation. His communication device chimed again. Marcus, Dr. Kaminsky's voice now, something's happening with the Novanian ship. They're activating systems we haven't seen before. Through the chamber's viewing portal, Marcus could see the massive Novanian vessel's exterior beginning to pulse with patterns of light. Defense mechanisms, Lyria explained, her voice tight. When the Queen enters a vulnerable state, automated systems activate to protect her. Are they targeting our station? Marcus demanded. Not intentionally. But in this state of confusion. She didn't finish the sentence. Marcus made a quick decision. Director Patel, order all human personnel to evacuation stations but do not depart. Dr. Kaminsky, prepare pheromone suppressants and distribute them to all human staff immediately. He turned to Lyria. I need to speak with the Queen. Impossible. She is in biochemical recovery. Then who's in command? Lyria's tendrils straightened in what he now recognized as determination. I am. As her appointed ambassador, authority transfers to me in her absence. Then help me fix this, Marcus urged. Before two species who met less than a week ago end up in an accidental war. Lyria touched her translation device, switching to a frequency Marcus hadn't heard before. She spoke rapidly in the native Novanian language, musical and complex beyond the translator's capacity. After a tense moment, the pulsing lights on the Novanian ship began to slow. I've ordered a biological containment protocol, she explained. All affected crew are being placed in isolation chambers where your pheromones cannot reach them. Marcus nodded. Thank you. This is temporary, Lyria cautioned. The Queen's experience with you was profound. Once she emerges from recovery, she may demand more extensive contact. With you specifically. What exactly happened during our exchange? Marcus asked, the implications beginning to dawn on him. Lyria's skin darkened to deep indigo. In Novanian biology, certain chemical signatures can create a form of imprinting. The Queen has potentially formed a biological attachment to you that, in our culture, would be considered. She searched for the right term, a mating bond. Marcus sat down heavily on the nearest surface. You're saying the Queen of an advanced alien civilization thinks I'm her mate because of how I smell? In simplified human terms, yes. Lyria's tendrils moved in what might have been frustration. This is why I warned you. The implications extend beyond biology into politics, succession rights, and interspecies law, none of which has precedent. His communication device chimed again. Ambassador, Director Patel sounded slightly calmer, the Novanian ship is standing down, but we're receiving a transmission from Earth. The Security Council is demanding an explanation. Marcus looked at Lyria, the gravity of the situation settling between them. What had begun as a simple diplomatic meeting had escalated into potentially the most complicated first contact scenario in human history. Tell them. Marcus began, then faltered. How could he possibly explain this? Lyria placed her six-fingered hand on his arm. Tell them the truth. That human biology has unexpected effects on Novanian physiology, requiring new protocols. Marcus nodded. And the Queen? Lyria's four eyes met his with intensity. That is more complicated. I must speak with you privately about that matter. There are options, but they require your full understanding of Novanian social structure. As Marcus prepared to address Earth's Security Council, he couldn't help but wonder how diplomatic training could have possibly prepared him for becoming the unwitting focus of an alien queen's biological attraction, and what options Lyria might propose to resolve the crisis. 2 weeks after the incident that nearly derailed human-Novanian relations, Marcus stood in the newly constructed interspecies embassy on neutral space. The facility had been hastily assembled on an orbital platform between Earth and the Novanian vessel, a physical manifestation of the careful distance now maintained between the species. The filtration systems are operating at peak efficiency, Dr. Kaminsky reported, adjusting settings on a control panel. Human pheromones are being neutralized in all common areas. Marcus nodded. And the private meeting chambers? Selectively permeable. Pheromone levels can be precisely controlled depending on the diplomatic objective. The doctor hesitated. Though I still question the wisdom of allowing any exchange at all, given what happened. Before Marcus could respond, the chamber door slid open to admit Lyria. The past weeks had changed her movements were more deliberate, her bearing more authoritative. As acting regent during the Queen's extended recovery, she had proven herself an adept diplomat. Ambassador Delgado, she greeted him formally, though her tendrils betrayed familiarity in their subtle movement. The Earth Security Council's proposals have been reviewed by our scientific committee. And? Marcus prompted when she paused. We accept the terms for controlled biochemical exchange. Your species' pheromones will be studied under strict protocols, with potential medical applications benefiting both our peoples. Dr. Kaminsky excused herself, leaving them alone in the chamber. As soon as the door closed, Lyria's formal posture relaxed. "The Queen has completed her recovery cycle," she said, her voice lower. "She wishes to see you tomorrow." Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. "Is that wise?" "Necessary," Lyria corrected. "But we have implemented safeguards. Her exposure to your natural scent will be gradual, controlled." She moved closer, the distance between them now intimate. "You never asked me about the options I mentioned during the crisis." "I assumed they were the protocols we've been implementing," Marcus replied. Lyria's tendrils curled in negation. "Those are scientific solutions. I spoke of cultural ones." Her 4 eyes studied him intently. "In Novanian tradition, when a queen forms an attachment, it can be redirected." "Redirected?" "To a designated proxy." Her skin darkened to that now familiar deep indigo. "Someone the queen trusts implicitly. Someone already attuned to the object of attachment." Understanding dawned slowly. "You're talking about yourself." "Yes." Her admission hung in the air between them. "I experienced the initial exposure to your biochemistry. The Queen and I share genetic lineage. It would be considered an appropriate substitution." Marcus considered her words carefully. "What exactly would this redirection entail?" "A formal bond. Between us." Her tendrils moved in patterns that conveyed both uncertainty and hope. "It would satisfy Novanian protocol while protecting the Queen from further biochemical disruption." "A marriage?" Marcus asked, struggling to translate the concept across species. "More complex than that human concept, but similar in some aspects." She hesitated. "There is another factor to consider. My exposure to your biochemistry has created permanent changes in my neural pathways. I think differently now." "Is that a bad thing?" "It is unprecedented. I perceive connections others of my kind cannot. I experience emotions with greater intensity." Her voice softened. "Particularly where you are concerned." The revelation shouldn't have surprised him, yet it did. "Lyria, are you saying that the biological attachment goes both ways?" "Yes." Her directness was pure Novanian. "Your own biochemistry has likely been altered by our exchanges as well, though your human physiology processes it differently." Marcus realized she was right. His fascination with Lyria had deepened beyond professional interest or even friendship. Something fundamental had shifted between them, something neither human nor Novanian, but uniquely their own. "What happens if we pursue this?" he asked. "We become the template for a new kind of diplomatic relationship. The first true human-Novanian pairing, with biological and political significance." Her tendrils extended toward him in invitation. "It would require sacrifices from both of us. And if we don't? The Queen's attachment will continue to create complications. The crisis may recur in different forms." She moved closer still. "And we would both deny what has already begun between us." In the sterile environment of the embassy, with filters carefully regulating their biochemical exchange, Marcus made his decision. He reached for the environmental controls and adjusted the settings, not enough to cause another crisis, but enough to allow their natural chemistry to interact without barriers. Lyria's tendrils responded immediately, reaching toward him as the subtle change in air composition registered on her receptors. "I accept," Marcus said simply. "Whatever form this takes, whatever challenges come with it. This feels right." As Lyria initiated the Novanian bonding gesture, placing her hand against his neck where his scent was strongest, Marcus understood that their unexpected biochemical compatibility had opened a door neither species had anticipated, a future where humans and Novanians might connect in ways that transcended conventional diplomacy. What had begun with a simple scent had evolved into something profound, the first bridge between two sentient species that went beyond cooperation to true understanding, biochemical, emotional, and ultimately, deeply personal. In the space between stars, between worlds, between biologies never meant to interact, they had found something new. Something worth preserving. Something worth exploring, together.